Mortis, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, all right. Hey, my name is Mortis, and you know, nice to meet you.
Brilliant. Um, about your band, how would you describe Mortis, the music and everything?
Oh God.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, as of right now, it's not so much a band. It's in that sense, I'm back to basics. It was a band for a long time, from sort of like around 2000, 2001. After this Metal Rain came out, it turned into a band, and we toured, did a lot of tours, a few records, and it was a band. At that point. And prior to that, it was me as a solo artist, very uncomplicated, from 93 to around 2001. And from around 2017, that's when we kind of decided that we weren't really having that much fun anymore, sort of touring with the band and everything. And we got along, the group, but there's too much negativity surrounding a lot of the whole touring experience wasn't that great, in the sense that we were getting older and we were kind of relying on income, and we weren't really bringing in a lot of cash. So, not that it wasn't always about the cash, but the older you get, the more it does become about the cash, unfortunately. So that kind of played into it, and frustrations and things like that. So we just decided to put the thing on a break before, I guess, we just started fucking killing each other. So after that, I was like, well, fuck, man. I mean, I had been playing with the idea of, anyway, going back to the mask and things like that, while we were still a band. And so I figured, fuck it. I'm here, kind of solo again. So I'm just going to go back and kind of start over. So that's pretty much where I'm at right now.
So has the mask come back?
Yeah.
Brilliant.
You've
Brilliant.
been under a rock, man. This is like,
I know. I know. It's just this bloody lockdowns everywhere has
yeah, I
put me
know. I
back.
mean, but before that, I toured. I don't want to sound like I'm a member of Iron Maiden, but I pretty much toured the world right up until the pandemic hit. I
Yeah.
had toured the US twice by that point, and fucking Australia and South America and Europe. Um, but yeah, for sure, the pandemic, fucking everything just fucking screeched to a goddamn halt, man.
Yeah.
That happened quick.
It
You
did.
know, you heard about this thing called Corona, and about a month later, the world was in a lockdown.
And you wouldn't have
Fucking
believed
crazy.
that it would have locked down so much.
No, that was it was or for that long, I guess. I mean, we
Yeah.
all thought, like, well, hopefully we're going to ride this out in a couple of months, and or here we are a couple of years later almost.
So, as regards Mortis itself, yourself really, um, what's been your influences? I know Emperor was probably the start of it all, wasn't it? But then
I
what?
mean, Emperor was where that was like one of my first bands that I was in.
Mm,
I had a couple of bands before that didn't last too long, and obviously didn't go anywhere. It was just local, various local things that you kind of like, had with the sort of school buddies and things like that. And then it got a little more serious with Emperor after a while. So you could say that was the start of it, even though it wasn't really the start of it. I mean, I've been a fan of that type of music for a long time, like black metal, and by
yeah,
black metal I mean, the first sort of generation, like Venom and early Sodom, and we call that stuff black metal battery. I'm not even sure if they called themselves that at the time, but I mean, it got sucked into that whole idea.
yeah.
Um, so but yeah, but as an active sort of musician, so to speak, Emperor was obviously the beginning. That's when it kind of like got its got some feet to walk on, during that time. But as far as my inspirations, when I quit Emperor and started more to solo, I mean, obviously that at that point I had been listening to a lot of that old sort of German Berlin school stuff, and that I considered at the time to be sort of darkly atmospheric. And there's no fucking way those dudes thought of themselves in that way. Those Germans back in the 70s, they were space hippies,
Yeah.
fucking around with these like huge modular synthesizers that look like spaceships, and then
Yep.
there's like, you got to be an engineer just to get like a peep out of them, because all the fucking cabling and shit is insane. The
Yeah.
modulars, the old Moogs and ARPs and what else, the Rolands and System hundreds and things like that. And so that was it just looked fantastic. I'm thinking, damn, they're like big closets full of knobs and fucking sliders, and they're
Yeah.
making this cool fucking music with it. I can't believe it. So I was into that, and to me it was just really atmospheric. But at the time I was, the black metal thing was a big thing for me. So I guess I was kind of like, I was young, and I was looking for darkness and everything. And that sounds naive, but that's the way it was. And so obviously stuff like Klaus Schulze and like early Tangerine Dream and my fucking phone, that stuff. I'm so popular, man. It's ridiculous, Yeah, that's James Hetfield wanting to jam. Yeah, nah, fuck him.
Brilliant.
Yeah. No, so I was into that shit, and so that inspired me to some degree. I wasn't trying to sound like those all, like what I call the sort of German electronic pioneers. But what really inspired me, and I've said this a lot, was the length of their songs. These guys made music that never ended.
Yeah.
It was like, I think if a vinyl had like 4 hours of playtime on each side, they would have made 4-hour long songs. But they were doing these like 20-25 minute, like fucking just never ending fucking, evolving soundscapes. And I thought that was fucking amazing. And that was probably the first time I realized that you can break rules. You don't have to make 4-minute songs. You can make fucking 25-minute songs. Yeah. So I went ahead and made a song that lasted for an hour with my first demo, the song of A Long Forgotten Ghost. It was so long that we actually, because of one of those Xerox deals, where you just buy blank tapes and copy them for people.
Yeah.
And you could get like 90-minute tapes. They're 45 minutes on each side. So I had to fade out the fucking song. It wasn't actually over, but it was only 45 minutes on that side, because 2 sides, that equals 90 minutes, right? And I faded it back in on side B for another 15 minutes of this monotonous fucking drony. So I was inspired by that, but I wasn't trying to sound like them musically, but just the idea of breaking one of those rules. That was an early inspiration.
That's brilliant. I mean, the long song that obviously stands in my mind is Kraftwerk, Autobahn. Just the monotonous of a German motorway pulling a record.
Oh yeah. And they're not exactly singers, those guys. I mean, they have great voices, but it's like they only sing in like about 2 tones, and it just goes on and on and on about the fucking Autobahn. It's great, man. I mean, Kraftwerk were one of those early electronic bands that I listened to as well, and I loved them, and they were more pop to me, and I didn't have a problem with that, but they didn't necessarily inspire me in any way that I can think of. But I certainly was a fan. I was buying Kraftwerk albums. I would go into every sort of secondhand vinyl store that I could find back in those days, and at that point, nobody cared about vinyl. Like 90, 91, 92, 93, it was on its way out. It was this damn CD was taking over everything. Yeah. So everybody was just getting rid of their vinyl. And I got a lot of all that old sort of synthesizer electronic music from the 70s and the 80s. I got that, like $5, That's not going to happen today. No. But Kraftwerk was one of those that I just stocked up on, And I mean, you could go into like pretty much any sort of secondhand store now. You'll never see, Kraftwerk is one of those bands you will rarely find used because people are not getting rid of it anymore.
I think
they're so timeless and so respected, and people, it's like if you have Kraftwerk in your collection, you get more respect from your friends now, I guess.
Yeah, they're quite a cool band to know.
They're probably a bit of a hipster band. I wouldn't be surprised if they've gotten sort of appropriated by the hipster community, because they tend to kind of grab a hold of things they think might be cool.
I know there's a very old
Kraftwerk was one of those. Huh?
There's a very old video of theirs out, and you can find it on YouTube somewhere. And it was one of their first ever shows, and they were this weird, just electronic sounds, and it was just weird sounds, and you could see the audience just, what the fuck?
What the fuck is this? Because they were out of Dusseldorf, right? Because they're not in Berlin. So, yes. They came out of Dusseldorf, and because Tangerine Dream and Klaus Schulze, those dudes were out of Berlin, which is why it's called Berlin School, I suppose. But yeah, the really early Kraftwerk wasn't really the structured sort of electro pop that they later became. So it's interesting that they actually they really started living up to the name Kraftwerk. I felt like later on when they became, basically their music sounded like electric current to me after a while.
Yes.
You know, structured, controlled current,
Yeah.
turned into catchy pop music. You know, robots. You know, which is fantastic. But it's interesting to note that in the really early days, I think they started out like in 1970. You know, because they're, you know, some of those guys, they had some other members in the beginning. They became Noi. You know,
Yeah.
that other really sort of groundbreaking band that only did a couple of albums, and I think it was like a lot of flutes and this weird, you know, sound experimentation, and they were still called Kraftwerk, so that was a bit weird. So I guess they kind of settled into their name later on, like we have an electronic sounding name, we must be electronic, you know?
Yeah, they just kept it and then just kept going.
Yeah, I'm just kind of fucking around, you know, but yeah, it's a weird thing to think about.
But I know
I love
your music has got some quite long instrumental
Yeah,
music,
I love it.
but it's really good. It really sounds so good.
Not as good as Kraftwerk. But that's not really possible. You know, that's why Kraftwerk's Kraftwerk, Tangerine Dream is Tangerine Dream. They're at the top of the fucking list when it comes to that. You know, in my book, you know. Yeah, I mean, some of it is decent. Some of it, I mean, obviously, you know, I'm always my own worst critic. I think there might be a couple of more people that are worse at criticizing me than myself, but fuck them.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, some of that stuff is okay. You know, some I'm not so happy with because I know that I was being sloppy, and I'm thinking, fuck, man, why didn't I just do that take again? You know, I had sometimes I got a little lazy, I think, looking back, you know, at some of the early stuff. But, you know, at the end of the day, though, the important thing is that other people enjoy it, to be honest with you, you know. So that's the way I choose to look at it.
I must admit, the first ever song I heard of yours was "Parasite God."
Oh wow, yeah, that's sort of post my long song period. You know, that's the first album that I made where I had kind of taught myself to program MIDI, and you know, I had to start using a Mac to create music. Prior to that, I was only using like I don't know how much you know about creating music on you know, digital audio state workstations and things like that, but you know, there's a lot of different ways to do it. I mean, but the easiest way, I suppose, at the end of the day, is using a computer. You know, you get the big screen and it's just easier. You have a better overview of things, and it's the brain of everything. You know, you can connect like a million keyboards to it and shit like that. And the other ways are to sort of work within you have certain keyboards or synthesizers and samplers. They're actually the same thing in one. They're everything at the same time, with onboard sequencers and things like that, and you can compose on those too. It's just that you got a much smaller display, and it's just way more fucking around making it, you know, just working on it. That's what I used to do, and it's kind of a pain. Yeah, so anyway, you know, the first time, that was the first album that I had actually started working with a Macintosh computer, and you know, hooking up a few samplers to that, and working with Cubase, which is like a audio sequencer program. And so, but I had nobody around to teach me anything. So I just sat there listening to Skinny Puppy albums, trying to figure out what they were doing. Which is like, could you pick a more difficult band to understand?
Not really.
With all the crazy layers and insanity and the distortion, the fucking, plus those guys are all brilliant. You know, it's just like, once again, it's like you're trying to climb Mount Everest when you should just be focusing on just getting up that little hill over there. You know, and I'm like, no, I'm gonna fucking, you know. So I'm listening to fucking Skinny Puppy, old Nine Inch Nails, and Enigma, who are like the three most interesting electronic projects of modern times that I can think of. Yeah. And I'm trying to be like them, you know, and it's the most frustrating fucking thing, because it's like you realize you're not there, man. You know, but at least I taught myself to program and things like that. So yeah.
But my opinion, Parasite God was brilliant. I mean, the video was brilliant, the beat was brilliant, the look.
It's not bad. We could have produced the album better, you know. I think, but it's a great album. I like it. The older that album gets, The Smell of Rain, which is where Parasite God is from, the older that album gets, the better my memories are of it. It's basically a happy accident album because of the bands, especially Nine Inch and Skinny Puppy, who tends to get rather aggressive and distorted and kind of fucked up. That's what I wanted to do, but at the time I didn't understand how to do it. I didn't understand that those guys process their sounds through a million weird boxes and then back into the computer, and it sounds like something totally different than it was when it went out. Yep. So I'm sitting there trying to make my keyboard sound like that. It's like, how the fuck did they, it's just an insanely frustrating experience. And it took me a while to understand that. I didn't understand it properly until I think on the Grudge, the next album, when I realized that, fuck it, I gotta put these sounds, I have to torture these sounds, with other things. And that's how you make it sound crazy, And so the Spill of Rain came out much softer than I wanted it to be. But looking back, that's a really happy accident because of the way those songs are and everything. That shouldn't be in any other way, So it's a good thing that I didn't, buy 10 different distortion pedals and start fucking around.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But you've pretty much established a great sound.
Yeah, it works. Yeah, for sure. I mean, whenever we played that album live, though, we became way more aggressive immediately. But that was just the way it was performed. Because of the give and take energy between the band and the crowd and everything, and there's just sort of feedback loop going on, and then it just decreases in pitch, So if you had gone to one of the shows for that album, it would have been a much harder presentation of all that music. But yeah, it works though. Yeah.
Is that difficult taking what you're doing in like a studio?
I'm sorry.
The live state. Is that difficult taking what you're producing for a record, for example, in a studio, and then taking that live and performing it live?
It's never going to sound exactly the same because normally, especially, and I guess we're talking in the sort of band scenario now.
Yeah.
It wasn't so much difficult as long as you could accept that it wasn't going to sound exactly the same as it would do on the album. But I think the crowd knows that. And we certainly know that. And I mean, also you cheat a little bit, and everybody does this when you deal with electronics. You have a little bit of a tape going in the background, some of those like the fast synths and the samples and some of those beats that you couldn't expect a drummer to fucking play. And so it's a question of sort of mechanics meeting organics, So you get some of the exact same elements because of that. And then and at that point, I think it's more a question of the sort of the quality of the PA, or does the place sound good? If the place sounds good, then chances are we're going to sound pretty good too.
Yeah.
And you play a dump, it's going to be a garbled bunch of fucking noise. But that can be cool too. Sometimes, it'll be like a whole different fucking performance. It'll be like a noise performance, with like total aggro. We've had that, and some of those shows have been the best ones too. Because it gets so immersive with the crowd and everything. Excuse me?
Yeah, the fans, the crowd who were there at that time.
Yeah.
They must drive your adrenaline to
when you get it, and this is going to sound a little weird, but when you get a good crowd, that certainly happens. And especially in those smaller places. And not that I'm a huge fan of playing small places. I like the mid-sized places. We never get to play big places. It was never a big band, but sometimes you kind of like, wow, this stage is big, and you realize you're going to be 10 feet from the crowd, and like, oh god, that rarely works. Maybe for much bigger bands, but for us, the best shows were always the ones where you were basically fucking exchanging sweat with the crowd, And for good or bad, I mean, sometimes somebody got a little too fucking intimate and started, fucking ripping people rip my shirt off. Sometimes I was like, oh fuck, I'd like to keep it if you don't mind.
Yeah, I need that.
Yeah, it's not that I don't care so much about they're my stage clothes. I got to make new ones now. Because that's one of the things that we always do. We always made our own stage clothes and shit like that. You just rip mine to pieces, like fuck.
Oh,
but I think it's a sign of approval.
Yeah, an odd sign, but yeah, it is.
Yeah.
So you make your own clothes as well for the stage.
What's that?
You make your own clothes for the stage as well.
Well, yeah. I mean, the thing is, like, back in those days, I never threw anything away. So when my regular sort of everyday clothes got too fucked up, I would just sort of throw them in like a box and just hold on to it, and then eventually they would make their way on stage because they got so tattered and fucked up. I always looked like a bum back in those days, and I still kind of do. So I never gave a fuck about that stuff, you know. I care a little bit more now because I got to take my kids to school and things like that. You don't want to show up with rats in your fucking hair or something. You know? So
I don't know. That might be interesting.
might be cool. Bring your work to your school day. Here's my dad. He's basically he's a friend of the rats, rat catcher. So you know, but yeah. I mean, we made our own clothes. It was just basically. It's not as fancy as it sounds. We didn't have a workshop or anything. It was just about setting up, and everybody else in my family gone to bed and just fucking ripping stuff apart and sewing it back up and making it look kind of messed up, you know. I was always into like the visual side of things. You could probably gather that from the photos.
Yeah, I've noticed that, and I've also noticed that like you put so much into your, like when you've released an album, all the artwork that goes with it, the posters, the whole design of everything. Everything is, it's almost like the whole thing is a big performance, and it's just all there.
Well, I mean, I've gotten lucky with some of the artists, you know, visual artists that I've been able to work with, like David Thoreau. I always fuck up his name. He's the guy I work with a lot these days. He does a sort of fantastical artwork that I've been using a lot for, even for reissues and then other things. And but I guess I've always been a bit of a Nazi when it comes to artwork and things like that. And I failed a couple of times. There are a couple of records that I look back and I think, what the fuck was I thinking when I slapped this shit on the sleeve, you know? So, I mean, I have a couple of fails, but I mean, by and large, I mean, every time I put something out, it has been pretty representative of the contents and just sort of who I am and my ideas and things like that. So I just like to stay in control, you know. I mean, I look at a lot of other bands' artwork, and a lot of it is really great. So I don't think that I'm outstanding in any way, but I mean, I do my best, and I'm happy with the way it looks most of the time.
But what struck me is that it almost, and when you used to buy a vinyl, it was all about the artwork on the cover. You got a sleeve. Yeah. Sometimes it had something else in it. Sometimes it'd open up and there'd be some other stuff in there. And I've noticed that you kind of represent that in your CDs as well.
I do.
Yeah, because you're always saying, you know, you've got a poster, you've got this, and everything looks, and it almost like it's a collector's piece rather than just a normal CD like a lot of people put out.
Cool. Yeah, I like further. That. I like that it feels that way. I have to admit, CD to me now is almost like an afterthought. You know, I mean, I do make sure that they look okay, but I feel like it's so limited in. Well, I mean, they sound okay and everything, and I guess you can still consider them practical if that's more important to you. You know, if you don't want to fill up your house with vinyl, I can certainly see, and you still want physical, then I think CD is a great alternative. But you know. Aside from that, it feels really limited. There's not much you can do in the sense of like, if you're going to add a poster with a CD, it's just going to be like a tiny thing, folded up like a million times, and it's not really going to be that impactful. With an album, you could put like an A2 poster in there, which is a fairly good size, you know, and so you could throw that in, and I sometimes throw in like 2 of them, and it kind of depends on. You know, if I collaborate with somebody, if it's like a license, then it's some other label putting it out, and they all have their budgets, you know. So I kind of try to push it, but sometimes they go like, "Oh fuck, we can't afford all this stuff," and you know. But I try to get as much stuff in there as I can, and you know, gatefold sleeves, I love that, but that obviously, you know, that adds to the weight of the album, and all of a sudden, since we're so reliant now, I've been completely in business mode now, apparently. Since we're so reliant on selling on mail order, which is where you sort of earn the biggest chunk of, you know, that's your biggest return from a sale. If a label sells, you know, there's nothing left. You know, you get paid a couple of peanuts after everything's said and done. But the thing is, like, if you do all the bells and whistles with the gatefold and everything, it adds to the weight of the album itself. All of a sudden, you have to charge more postage money from people ordering, and that could stop some people. Like, oh, I thought, it went from €8 to fucking €15 to ship this thing, all because of a little bit of extra cardboard. Some people may not really, to some people, perhaps a gatefold isn't that big a deal. So you always have to think about these things. I don't like that because it kind of fucks with your creativity when you have to think business.
Yeah.
But sometimes you just have to do that. Yeah, it's one of those things you just have to take into consideration. It kind of sucks, back in the old days, I didn't have to think about that because I was signed with labels and it was their problem. My problem then was that I wasn't getting paid anything.
Yeah.
They made all the sales and I sat there watching.
That's not fair, is it? It's not fair at all.
No, it was never fair.
No. Don't think it ever will be, will it?
Probably not. I mean, I'm wiser now, and I haven't been sort of locked down into a recording deal for a long time, and I'm not against signing a proper deal in the future, but it's got to be a much better deal than the ones that I had in the past, because those were they're pretty rough.
Yeah.
So at least I know what to look out for now. I'm by no means like, I'm not a music lawyer, so I can still fall into a lot of traps, I think, but at least I know how to look for some of them.
Yeah, that's the main thing. That's the main thing.
Yeah.
What genre would you put your music in, or there's not a genre for it?
I don't know if there is. I mean, I think the stuff that I did on The Smell of Rain, The Grudge, Perfectly Defect, The Great Deceiver, those records that were when Mortiis was kind of a band, and we were sort of creating this crossover between, I suppose, electronic / industrial with some sort of metal-ish elements. I mean, that was, I used to just call it like crossover musical alternative. That sounds so lame. Industrial metal, but that makes you think about Fear Factory, and we didn't sound anywhere near what they sound like. So fuck, man. I mean, I really don't know. Crazy experimental lab rats, fuck, dude. I mean, I have no idea, and that's why whenever I see my records in the record store, I mean, the way the sections are always wrong. I feel like usually it's just in black metal, which, like, I get it. I had a brief history there many years ago, and I'm still on the fringes of it, just because of the sort of return to my roots that I do now, and I'm more associated with it now, I would say, than I have been for a long time. But it's not technically black metal what I do. There's a certain, there's a parallel there. But I mean, musically, that's about it.
Yeah, I thought I'd ask you because I was listening to your new album earlier, and I thought, where does that sit? It's almost like you've made your own genre, and that's where you're going to be.
For good or bad, yeah. I guess.
I think it's for good, personally, but
yeah, I mean, what happened with the early stuff that I did, that I kind of returned to on the Spirit of Rebellion record. Some person, I mean, some genius or some asshole, I haven't made up my mind yet, started calling it dungeon synth. And I remember I heard that expression or that term 6 or 7 years ago now, and I thought, that is the stupidest thing I've ever heard. Just immediately my practical brain goes, how do you power up a synth in a dungeon? There's not going to be any power outlets down there. Because I got practical with it, which is stupid. I mean, my creative brain should have kicked in and gone, oh, okay. But my practical brain kicked in, like, that's not possible. You got to get an extension cord, So, but, after a couple of years, I just got used to it. And now it's just another word, It's like one of my favorite bands from the 70s. They're called Kiss, right?
Yep.
The worst band name on the planet. But Kiss is Kiss now, right?
Yeah.
It's a shitty fucking name.
It is a stupid name, isn't it?
It's a horrible fucking name.
Kiss.
It's the worst.
What are they thinking of?
I don't know, man.
It's just
No, it's just retarded. But and I don't know, maybe that worked in New York in 1972. You know, we had the New York Dolls and that whole sort of proto punk sleaze thing going on, and Twisted Sister was out there, you know, doing, because they go way back, you know, and you know, sort of playing all the fucking dumps around New York and that area. So maybe that was a thing, you know, Johnny Thunders and all that shit.
Yeah.
Don't ask me, man. But as a Norwegian guy, you know, as a Norwegian kid, I was like, what the fuck kind of name is this? You know, I love the band. I fucking absolutely thought they were the best thing on you know, that ever happened on Earth, ever. You know, and I still kind of think that, you know, even though Gene Simmons seems to be a terrible fucking douchebag, but and they're just like a business institution, and it's very unattractive to me when it's that obvious. You know, it's kind of, they don't make it easy for me to be a fan.
No.
Yeah, but I still dig your old stuff, you know. So.
But they still have that name.
Yeah, but a great logo though.
Yeah, yeah. You see, they had to do something, didn't they? Couldn't just put Kiss in normal letters because that would have looked
no.
stupid.
They got that like almost like the AC/DC thing, you know, where the
Yeah.
fucking almost like a lightning strike going there.
That's right. Yeah.
That they can't use in Germany, you know that, because it looks like the SS.
Oh.
So if you ever see a German Kiss album, like a German pressing, it's got that sort of more like a set.
Oh, really?
Yeah, no, it's true. Because I used to get those copies, like, because everyone knows Europe, right? So those copies were floating all over Europe. So a lot of times, you know, when I got a Kiss album in my collection, it had that fucking German Kiss logo. Yeah. Brilliant. Yeah. Sensitive stuff.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
And like half of that band are Jews too. So that makes it even more weird and absurd.
They really weren't thinking, were they, at all?
No.
Not at all.
No.
Doppelganger. What a great track that one is.
Yeah, that's from The Great Deceiver.
It is absolutely brilliant.
It's a cool one, and a funny story about that. I had Jürgen Engler, you know, from The Crips. He remixed that one, and he did a really cool punky remix. But and he never mentioned it, but for some later on, I was checking out The Crips discography on Discogs, and they had a song from the 90s called Doppelganger. And so I thought, like, well, I guess that's nice of Jürgen not to sort of, you know, call me out on stealing his song name when he was remixing my song of the exact same name. You know, I didn't understand it. I didn't realize it at the time, but, you know, he could have mentioned that, like, hey, man, you know, I have a song like that I made 20 years ago. Then you just took my title.
But he didn't.
No, I didn't know.
No. Oh.
No, and he remixed my song. So that was weird. But it was a great remix, man. And it's a cool guy, too.
Yeah, good band as well. Very
good. Yeah, absolutely.
Very good. You've been going a long time, and are you still enjoying gigs now, though? Well, obviously,
I'm not enjoying a lot of them right now.
No, I'm just about to say, and not that you can do many right now.
No.
But do you look forward to them again?
Huh?
Are you looking forward to them again?
Yeah, you know what? I mean, I was starting to feel a sense of cabin fever for a while, you know, like about a year into the pandemic. I was starting to feel pretty comfortable just sitting in the studio working on music, not having to worry about, like, fuck, there's a show in a week. Because you know, between 2017 and early 2020, I did a lot of these sort of one-offs, or just, you know, I just got on a plane, flew somewhere in Europe and did like a show or 2 shows or 3 shows and go back home. And that was kind of a cool way to work instead of, you know, doing the whole tour thing. But it also causes a certain amount of stress because you always have to go ready. There's always like a flight at 5 a.m. coming up, you know, and in a couple of days. So I was always busy packing and fucking getting ready, making sure I had everything, and you know, communicating with promoters and all kinds of tech people to make sure everything was as smooth as it could be. So I spent a lot of time and energy on that. So that was a nice thing not to have to fuck around with for a long time. I felt like I was catching up on music making and shit like that. So you know, like I said, about a year in, I was like, oh shit, it looks like the pandemic might be over soon, because you know, you started feeling like was going to pass. And oh shit, yeah, we've had this tour with Mayhem in Europe lined up for since fall of 2020, and it's been pushed back several times. And we're all trying to still make it happen. So it's obviously on the agenda. It's in my future at some point. And I started thinking about like, fuck, I've forgotten how it's done. I don't know what I'm gonna do. Like, there's gonna be so many technical problems because I'm out of practice. I'm rusty as fuck. There's gonna be so many things I'm gonna forget about, and it's gonna be like a disaster. And then it's all gonna come back. But there's gonna be like a couple of shows that are gonna be complete clusterfucks, because I haven't done this in so long, and that started freaking me out a little bit. But that was like 6 months ago, and I'm still fucking here.
Yeah.
So but I want to get back out there, man.
Yeah.
I think we all do. Even
Yeah,
though it's very comfortable to just sit in a studio and there's no pressure and nobody's watching you, and so you can make all the mistakes you want. But at the end of the day, man, I mean, fuck. And I'm not exactly getting rich not going out there playing either. So it would be nice to have that extra cash flow.
Yeah, exactly.
To be honest,
it can't be easy when that's kind of your income, and you're stuck.
I mean, for me, it was my side income because I've never been able to make enough to make a comfortable living. If I was living on my own, I could have probably gotten by. But I have 2 kids, in a house. There's fucking 2 cars. There's a wife. Yeah. There's a wife. Glad she didn't hear that.
You'd have been in trouble. It would have been the dungeon for you.
I actually would have. Yeah, she would have commented on that. But but they do spend some money. They shop and shit like that. So I also work in health, which is how I got corona in the first place.
Oh,
I was just in the wrong place at the wrong time. Bad fucking luck. And I think I didn't wear gloves. I was sloppy. I was wearing the what do you call it? Fucking the mask. Yeah.
Yeah.
And but I wasn't doing any, like, sometimes there's certain intimate things that you have to do with patients. And in this case, it really wasn't. But I'm pretty damn sure that's how I got it. I just wasn't wearing gloves. I'm not working at hospitals or anything. I would have sounded really sloppy, like a bad nurse.
Yeah.
But I'm not a nurse. It's more like in homes and things like that. Healthcare assistant, I believe, is the proper term for it. So I was just helping a guy get to bed. And that's how we all got infected. He was patient 0 in that, in that house, in that department.
Bloody hell.
So, yeah. 2 days later, you're sick as fuck. Yeah, quick.
That is too quick.
Yeah.
Your latest stuff, you've got the ones that are more instrumental. They sound very epic and kind of cinematic.
Yeah, I guess that's the way it kind of pans out sometimes with me when I make stuff. I've always had a tendency to really layer on sound after sound after sound. It's almost like making a statue. You start with a big slab of stone, then you just chip away. I'll add a fuckload of stuff, way too much, and then I'll start taking stuff away. And a lot of interesting things can kind of reveal itself underneath all those layers when you start combining and recombining and taking shit away, putting it back on or moving it somewhere else. But it especially when I make that type of music, I suppose it does tend to go a little towards the cinematics style. Even though it doesn't sound, it's not like fucking Simmer soundtracks or anything like that. I'm not a pro in that sense, but I mean there's definitely elements of sort of bombastic, orchestral type of structured stuff.
Yeah. That's another. It's kind of it's a different way of doing things, and I just think that's really good. That obviously you've got that, I would say, an unusual voice which comes across in your music when you sing. So to miss that out and then put instrumental, that's quite versatile.
Well, I mean, there are that album that I think you're talking about, the Spirit of Rebellion record. It kind of sounds like that's the one you've been listening to. There are voices on it, not my voices. They're probably voices recorded back in the 50s. What I found samples of an instrument called the Chamberlin, which is kind of like the forefather of the mellotron. If you're aware of the mellotron, which is kind of like it's like an organ style sort of tape based, almost like an early sampler type of keyboard from the 60s and the 70s. If you hear like on the old Black Sabbath albums and like on the Volume 4 album, for example, there's a lot of like this sort of melancholic, almost choir-like sound. That's like a mellotron.
Wow.
I love the sound of that. I just didn't think it fit with what I was doing. I tried it, and then I found the Chamberlain, which was same concept, but created, I guess, like a decade earlier. So it comes out of the 50s, and it runs on like a bunch of pre-recorded tape loops, with like operatic singers, and there's like some orchestral instruments in there, and I really love the voice reel on it. The tape that has the voice on it, which was very operatic, and that's all the choir stuff. I think all of it, at least 90% of it. I can't remember exactly now. Like the majority of what you hear that are voice like on that record is comes out of that, sort of a bank of samples that I found. So
Works well, though.
yeah, it had a melancholic vibe to it that I really liked. So yeah, love it.
That's good. Where do you see, what's your future, as in music wise?
I'm working on a couple of things now. But looks like I'm working on two different records at the moment, and but you never know where shit ends up. And one of them is very, as it stands right now, it's very, very sort of Tangerine Dream / Vangelis. Remember Vangelis, the Greek guy?
Yes.
Blade Runner.
Yes.
And that Spiral, Fire and Ice. Actually, Heaven and Hell, I think the album is called. He did a lot of really, really cool stuff, like in the late 70s, early 80s, and beyond. I mean, he made one of my favorite soundtracks, which was the Columbus film. I think it was Ridley Scott, 1392, I think it's called, Conquest of Paradise.
Don't know that one.
That's a great movie. You got to check it out. Just Google like Conquest of Paradise, Vangelis. You get the soundtrack. I mean, the choir work that he composed has been very inspirational to me.
Did he do Chariots of Fire as well?
Yeah, that was him. Yeah,
that was it. Yeah.
He's done some big stuff. I mean, he's. You could even go as far as to say he's had a couple kind of like hit songs in a sense.
Yeah.
Some of that Blade Runner stuff is fucking iconic. Everybody knows it.
Yeah.
Chariots of Fire, everybody's heard it.
Yeah.
Definitely. You know what I mean? So in a sense, it's had some hits, which is not bad for an electronics guy, but he's beyond that. He's like a composer, and he would probably punch me in the face if you heard me talking now and calling him an electronics guy, because I think he's just, from what I understand, he's ditched all the electronics. He's just playing piano and stuff now, which is fine. Sounds boring to me, but if that's his thing, go for it. Yeah. The guy was performing shows when he was 4 years old. He's a fucking Mozart, so he can do what he wants.
Yeah, who's going to tell him not to do it?
It's a kind of person that you hate because they're so talented. You dislike them because of their talent. Like, you motherfucker.
Yeah, you know too much. You.
Yeah, you're so much better than me. I fucking hate you, man.
Yeah.
At least I acknowledge it. In an aggressive kind of way. So yeah, I've been very inspired by his electronics era. And so that one project that I'm working on is very much in that vein. Tangerine Dream, even some John Carpenter, if you remember, like his old soundtracks,
yes.
Escape from New York, that type of thing.
Yeah.
So that whole like late 70s, early 80s, that's where a lot of that inspiration lies. And then there's another record that is going to be much closer to the sort of Smell of Rain mixed with maybe The Great Deceiver type of thing. So, it's going to have like a lot of those electronic and sort of guitar driven elements and things like that. So they're two very different. I'm talking through my belches now. That's a sign of being middle-aged, apparently. I'm just, yeah. I heard that on a comedy show the other day. When you talk through your belches, you're basically a certain age, and I just did it. It's a fucking Coke that I'm drinking.
Yeah.
So there's two very different projects going on.
That's good though, because that I've noticed that you don't. Well, I don't personally anyway. I don't get bored listening to music because it varies.
Well, yeah,
There's
and
a good variation there.
yeah, I think I would probably be very bored if I was going to do the same stuff over and over. Um, I can see why some bands do it because it's a formula that really works. I mean, you know, bands like Ramones and AC/DC, you don't really want them to change too much
No,
because their style is so iconic and just so fucking. It's like they just invented the light bulb. You know, like don't change it, man. You know, it
yeah,
works.
it works.
Yeah. I mean that as a fan, that's the way I would think. And I know some people feel the same way about me and they get a little upset when you know something new comes out and it doesn't sound like the last thing. But I was never really like that though. You know, like every time I put something out, it was always a noticeable evolution or a noticeable change. I mean, there might have been a couple of records back in the 90s that were almost like brother and sister albums, you know, but that didn't last long. That was a period that lasted like 3 or 4 years. And ever since then, it's always been like, okay, whatever's going to happen, happens. So it's a little, I don't know if people still want to be a little fucking miffed, you know, because, well, your album doesn't sound like the one I like from 96. Like, well, that's because that's 25 years ago.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Fuck off, you know.
Move on a bit. Come on.
Yeah. Get with it.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm playing techno now. Learn to love it.
But it is, it's good. But it's, but there's not a massive, well, there is a change, but there's not a massive change. You still know it's Mortiis.
I guess so. I mean, it's still me making it, so maybe there is a red line running through all of it. I'm not sure I always hear that, but if someone else does, then that's great. You know,
Just what you want, isn't it?
Yeah, totally, absolutely.
Anything else you'd like to add, Mortiis?
No, I'm good, man. Yeah,
You good?
yeah. I don't think I have anything more. You know, and no more silliness from me.
No, but it's been absolutely brilliant meeting you.
Thank you. Likewise.
Mortiis, absolute pleasure meeting you.
Thank you.
It's been fun as well, and I've learned a lot.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Cool. I'll see you.
You take care.
You too.
Bye.
Right. Bye-bye.
Bye.